without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first presenter. And this is Mr. Almog Ale-Raz, and he is the co-founder and CEO of a company called CorNeat. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Almog Ale-Raz, and I'm the CEO and VP R&D of CorNeat Vision. Today, I will present you our disruptive biomimetic implants technology. It is poised to significantly impact implants and implantables and bring about novel solutions that address unmet needs across multiple therapeutic fields. Our core technology was discovered serendipitously 6 years ago by Dr. Gilad Litvin, who's my mountain biking teammate. Gilad, who's an ophthalmologist, was working on an artificial cornea and was researching ways to permanently integrate artificial optics with resident ocular tissue. The main issue with implants and implantables is, of course, the foreign body response they trigger. Our immune system will work to either degrade and eventually absorb foreign or implanted material, or alternatively encapsulate it with a granuloma. Devices that aim to integrate with tissue, for soft tissue reinforcement, for example, eventually get absorbed. No one is set to find a way to seamlessly and permanently integrate synthetic material and implants with surrounding tissue. Well, until now. I'm honored to present you today the EverMatrix. The EverMatrix, which is seen here, is the first ever non-degradable material that mimics the extracellular matrix, which is essentially the collagen skeleton of the tissue. When implanted, its structure and polymer composition enables it to practically go under the radar of the immune system and stimulate cellular proliferation that leads to full integration. The material can be fabricated to thicknesses from dozens of microns and has extremely high tensile strength. The fact it remains in the tissue makes the integrated tissue even stronger than the original, kind of that like metal mesh within a concrete wall. In January 2020, we hit a major milestone, proving EverMatrix's ability to biomechanically integrate substance and tissue. Jamal, a terminally blind 78-year-old man who didn't see for a decade, regained his sight following a 1-hour surgery. This truly emotional moment, which was captured on video, was broadcasted on TV news and on social media all over the world. Jamal is now 15 months post-op, and his vision is stable since day 2, with no complaints on pain or discomfort. When our clinical advisors were first exposed to our animal studies, they immediately indicated they'd love to get a piece of this material to deal with other indications. We've pivoted since, and today we have 4 products under development, proving that EverMatrix can be deployed to support several use cases. While we started with biomechanical integration of implants and tissue, EverMatrix can also enable permanent soft tissue reinforcement. We can use it as a membrane for guided tissue and bone regeneration, and also for concealment of irritating implants and sensors. Applications are spanning ophthalmology, periodontology, orthopedics, general and plastic surgery, gynecology, and more. What makes EverMatrix work is its similarity to the ECM in terms of fiber diameter and porosity. As you can see in these scanning electron microscope images, it looks the same. We scanned EverMatrix next to a strand of hair so you can understand the dimensions. The fibers are 1 to 2 microns in diameter. But it's the porosity that triggers fibroblast migration. Pores in the range of several microns enable cells to exert forces on the ECM, sending mechanical signals that propagate in the matrix. The mechanoreceptors on the fibroblast membranes react to these forces, triggering biological processes that lead them to protrude along the matrix fibers and eventually latch onto them. EverMatrix pores are smaller in an order of magnitude than any non-degradable materials tried before for tissue integration, PTFE, for example. EverMatrix fibers are non-degradable as they are made from polyurethanes. We use a chemical engineering process called electrospinning to make them. This is a well-established method that is used today to produce collagen and other absorbable scaffolds, but it's the permanency of EverMatrix that makes the difference. EverMatrix disruptive tissue integration capabilities were proven in over 12 different studies, in vitro, in vivo, and now also in humans. Here in the center, you can see histological evidence from an in-vivo study demonstrating full fibroblast colonization and abundant collagen deposition within our matrix. There is no capsule formation, and even capillaries coursing their way through the material, rendering it an integral part of the tissue. Our EverPatch product, which is a permanent tissue reinforcement matrix for ophthalmic surgeries, here on the right, was used to cover and conceal a glaucoma device laid on the sclera. As you can see in our first patient, who was operated in both eyes, the eye with the EverPatch is quiet, while the other with the donor tissue is congested and inflamed. Besides the huge aesthetic differences, our key advantage here is, of course, permanency. We currently work to clinically validate our first two products, teaming up with leading clinical sites in the US, Europe, and Asia. We expect our first FDA regulatory approval within a year. We have a very strong broad IP. Our patent and IP strategy were recently validated by Wilson Sonsini, who also recommended drafting additional divisional patents for some solutions. So far, we've raised $12.5 million. Additional $4 million were invested last year from BioMed VC with focus on the Chinese market. We were recently awarded a $2.9 million grant from the European Innovation Council to support scale manufacturing and market introduction of our artificial cornea. We are currently seeking $15 million in the form of a SAFE that will bridge the company to round B, planned toward the market launch of our artificial cornea. This will enable maturing the company toward an IPO or M&A 18 months later. We already have established contacts with some potential buyers who are following our progress. We have a very devoted, skilled, and efficient team, which includes engineers, clinical, regulatory, and business experts. From a scientific perspective, we are supported by the world's top physicians. These include current and past presidents of leading medical societies. We are looking for leaders and KOLs to support us with R&D and clinical work, as well as with investment, enabling us a soft landing in the United States. We invite you all to join us on our unique, exciting, and life-changing journey. Thank you.
Almog, thank you. As I mentioned, please put your questions for Almog and CorNeat in the Q&A function, which is next to the chat. I'm going to start us off here. This is really exciting technology. I just look at it and I think it likely has so many applications. And I know you've started with ophthalmology, but given the permanence of your EverMatrix, I'm guessing this could be used even in high stress areas such as tendon repair.
Yeah, I mean, every physician that sees the results, it's for ophthalmologists, it's an eye opener. For periodontologists, it's a jaw dropper. And we've been speaking to gynecologists and orthopedics. Everyone has use cases that are brought up immediately when you see the histological results. Of course, eventually, if this integrates with the tissue, giving it strength and flexibility, this can really be a game changer also for these use cases.
That's super exciting. And tell me, I know you have implants that are in humans at this point. How long have you followed those patients out? Talk a little bit about your clinical outcomes so far.
Yes, so for the EverPatch, that little piece of that material for ophthalmic surgeries, we have 26 patients now. The longest follow-up is 16th month. This study is going to be closed soon, and we'll be following up all patients for another 6 months. We are also running a clinical trial for artificial cornea with 8 patients implanted already, most regained sight. There are some amazing stories out there. We have patients in Canada, in France, and here in Israel. We'll be closing this first in human study, just doing a couple more implantations and start a pivotal study with another 30. This will put us on a path to a regulatory approval within a year and a half to 2 years.
That's fantastic. And I think a game changer for those patients, I'm sure. We have a couple questions from our audience here. One, don't polyurethanes undergo metal ion-induced oxidative degradation, over time? In parentheses, over years, really is what the question is.
Yeah, so polyurethanes are very stable. They're used today, I think, to cover pacemaker leads, for example. It's a very well-known material, and it doesn't degrade over time. We are using a carbonated polyurethanes, which are even stronger than just simple polyurethanes. And so far, we haven't seen any degradation in none of our studies and preclinical work.
That's exciting. And again, how far out have you followed that up to this point?
So the material, I mean, this polymer doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
I mean, we've done exhaustive extractions and long stability testing. In the ophthalmology space, we need to do hydraulic stability tests that
Okay.
simulates about 5 years in the human eye, and no degradation whatsoever.
Very good. All right. Um, what's the 12 million that you're raising currently going to be used for?
So mainly it's going to support the existing clinical trials of the first two products, and also the initiation of clinical trial with with the gingival reinforcement patch, and with the ESHAM, which is a glaucoma drainage device that integrates with the eye wall. We're also working on scaled manufacturing, as I mentioned, and we will need to do some, market access work. So working on reimbursement and distribution. We actually signed up our first 3 distributors last quarter, and we hope to enter the market with enough distributors on the ground to support our numbers.
Very cool. And another question from our audience. So with the artificial corneas, if your device is not used to kind of hold the artificial cornea in place, what happens? So what's the benefit of utilizing the EverMatrix in that procedure as opposed to not? And how long does it last?
So the way the CorNeat KPro, the keratoprosthesis work, is that we have a lens which is very wide. It actually resembles the original cornea, and it's much better in terms of optical quality than anything that was ever done in this space before. This lens is surrounded by a skirt that is implanted under the conjunctiva, so it does hold the lens in place. We have a posterior undercut where we fit the corneal stump of the host cornea, but this is only good for short term. For the long term, we rely on biology for the integration.
And in cases if your product wasn't used, what happens to those corneas? What are the concerns that we would worry about?
In cases where the KPro wouldn't be used, well, for corneally blind patients, the only available solution today is keratoplasty, donor tissue. I don't know if you know, but about 20 to 30% of these surgeries are repeated surgeries, and there are about 20% of the indications that are not suitable for clinical reasons for the surgery. So while in some places, like in China, there are 5 million corneally blind patients and only 5,000 transplantations, even in the US, there are about 100,000 people on the sidelines that are not in line for the surgery. We can provide these people with their vision and independence.
That's fantastic. Well, Almog, I appreciate you being here tonight. It was great to learn about CorNeat and what you're doing. And just to know that not only is this being used in the ophthalmology space, but you guys are expanding well beyond that. So super exciting. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.